The Marshall Plan was the Western Allies' strategy to rebuild Europe after World War II. The economies of Western Europe had been broken through years of carpet bombing, military action, damaged infrastructure, and broken supply lines. The United States had doubled its manufacturing capability in the 10 years between 1937 and 1947, according to the United Nations 1948 World Economic Report. The U.S. was also the single highest producer of oil and gas products. The Congress of the United States was ready to fund all war-torn countries in Europe. The questions that linger about the Marshall Plan are about its legacy. What can we learn about the united commitment of the Allies, the economic direction that this commitment manifested, the Atlantic unity born from this period, and the case for government subsidies to promote direction for markets? In the summer of 1947, the Secretary of State, George Marshall, gave an address at Harvard University. The speech was the forming commitment to help Europe in exchange for the promise not to trifle with political systems that endangered world order, such as communism. This is reflected in a quote from his speech.
It is logical that the United States should do whatever it is able to do to assist in the return of normal economic health in the world, without which there can be no political stability and no assured peace. Our policy is directed not against any country or doctrine, but against hunger, poverty, desperation, and chaos. Its purpose should be the revival of a working economy in the world so as to permit the emergence of political and social conditions in which free institutions can exist.
Announcements of the plan were broadcast across Europe. At the same time, President Truman kept it out of newspaper headlines in the United States in order to limit reaction from American voters and taxpayers. In 1948, the European Recovery Program, or the ERP, was passed by a bipartisan coalition of U.S. senators 83 to 17. This greenlit $5 billion of loans and grants to Central European governments to buy American products. This figure later increased to about $13 billion over its 5-year course. Marshall's speech and the passage of the ERP caused immediate rejection from the Soviets and Stalin himself in the 1947 Paris meetings. According to the Soviet Union, the plan was a way for American funds to buy up European economic resources. This rejection increased the antagonistic relationship between the Western and Eastern Bloc countries. To promote the plan, America used advertising and marketing tools of the era. To help Europeans imagine the plan's impact, posters like these that envision an ascendant and united Europe. Money was dispensed through grants and loans to European government agencies. A U.S. businessman was appointed as the ERP representative in most major cities in countries accepting ERP funds. These representatives acted as coordinators of U.S. imports and advisors on best practices and economic standards. Over $300 million was spent on technical support from U.S. business people who toured Europe and its factories in major cities to help modernize business practices and optimal use of American products. According to reports, as much as 15% of all funding went into the purchase of fossil fuels, which helped support the European auto industry. Americans were also able to restart German coal mines, which increased the advanced manufacturing in Europe. The Marshall Plan was a success because of the wide variety of services and goods that the U.S. could supply, which in turn created a more robust and diverse economy in Europe. The Marshall Plan was the beginning of a united Western Europe. The money and resources offered by the United States was a sufficient enough reward for Europeans to unite under a capitalist system. The U.S. representatives advocated for the guarantee of the plan with the condition that Europeans did their part to rebuild their countries. The period also teaches us that the benefit of targeted government spending and how manufacturing can uplift an economy. While we cannot match the benefits of the Marshall Plan to something like the modern infrastructure bill, the similarities are there. The U.S. has just passed its $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and the Build Back Better bill is proposed by Democrats in Congress. These bills potentially support building wind turbines on U.S. coast, helping auto industries transition to electric vehicles, rebuilding American schools and public infrastructure, as well as offering paid family leave and child care to millions of Americans. We know the scale of the Marshall Plan compared to both proposed bills is relatively small. The Marshall Plan spent just over $13 billion, approximately $130 billion in today's dollars, just 1/10 of the current infrastructure bill that passed in 2021. What can our understanding of the Marshall Plan tell us about this bill? These current economic policies can boost the American economy and pave the way for new technological innovation. Research by the Economic Policy Institute shows that infrastructure spending stimulates the economy more than other government spending, like tax credits. This economic activity is not guaranteed with just the infrastructure package. One of the essential parts of the Marshall Plan was the commitment from participating states to build these new trade routes and economic systems. It was the pledge by member states to financial stability that created the unity we know as the Transatlantic Alliance, which persists to this day. We should also build the foundation for future growth in our infrastructure and green technology in exports overseas. International independence will support the American economy for decades to come. In the words of Alice Rivlin, a legendary policy expert at the Brookings Institute, we cannot be United States if we have separate economies with wealthy elites living in penthouses high above struggling streets, or coastal states surging ahead and interior states falling behind. Thanks for watching.